Good evening and welcome. Tonight, we delve into a question that sits uncomfortably at the intersection of our playlists and our principles. In an age of instant information and social accountability, can we, or should we, separate the art from the artist? To explore this complex issue, I'm joined by two distinguished guests. Leo Vance is a seasoned music critic who champions the autonomy of art. And Chloe Toussaint is an ethicist and social activist who argues that our consumption is never a neutral act. The central question of our debate is this: where do we draw the line between our love for music and our ethical responsibilities as consumers? Leo, let's begin with your opening statement.
Thank you, Evelyn. The position I hold is fundamentally a simple one. The greatness of a work of art is independent of the moral character of its creator. Art should be judged by its own intrinsic merits, its form, its beauty, its innovation, its emotional power. To do otherwise is to fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of art. Let's consider the historical precedent. If we were to apply a moral purity test retrospectively, our cultural heritage would be decimated. Caravaggio, a master of the Baroque, was a violent criminal. Wagner, whose music is sublime, was a notorious anti-Semite. Do we tear down their paintings and silence their operas? Of course not. We acknowledge their flaws as men, but we recognize their genius as artists. Furthermore, the very nature of art is to challenge, to provoke, and to explore the full, often messy, spectrum of human experience. It is not meant to be a tool for social hygiene, or a reflection of moral perfection. The concept of the death of the author is critical here. Once a song is released into the world, it no longer belongs to the artist, it belongs to the listener. Its meaning is created in the act of listening, in the personal connection we form with it. The artist's intentions or personal failings become secondary to that experience. Finally, let's be practical. In the modern streaming era, the financial impact of a single listener's boycott is infinitesimally small. It's a symbolic gesture, a form of self-purification, rather than a meaningful tool for enacting change. To deny oneself the profound experience of great music over this symbolic act seems a poor trade-off. We must not reduce art to a mere referendum on its creator's character.
Thank you, Leo. Chloe, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Leo speaks of art as if it exists in a vacuum, a beautiful object floating free from the world. I argue the opposite. To consume an artist's work is to actively support them, and when that artist is known to be harmful, that support becomes an unethical act. My argument rests on what I call the, quote, platform theory. In our hyper-connected world, support is not just financial. It is cultural. Every stream, every concert ticket, every social media follow contributes to an artist's cultural relevance. It keeps them in the public eye, signals their value to the industry, and ultimately normalizes their presence. When we give a platform to an artist with credible accusations of abuse or a history of promoting hate speech, we are implicitly stating that their talent outweighs their harm. This sends a dangerous message that accountability does not apply to the gifted. Moreover, we must consider the victims. To continue celebrating an artist who has caused profound harm is a deep and painful act of disrespect to those they have hurt. It tells victims that their trauma is less important than our entertainment. It asks them to exist in a culture that not only forgives their abuser, but actively celebrates them. That is a fundamentally unjust position. Finally, Leo's argument ignores a simple truth. There is an abundance of incredible music made by non-controversial artists. We are not facing a choice between a problematic genius and silence. We have a vast ocean of talented creators who are not embroiled in ethical scandals. Choosing to direct our attention, our money, and our cultural energy towards them is a positive ethical act that helps foster a healthier, more equitable, and more just music industry for everyone.
Thank you both for those compelling opening statements. Chloe, I'd like to circle back to you. Leo brought up the historical argument that we would lose much of our cultural heritage if we judged past artists by today's standards. How do you respond to that? Is it a fair comparison?
It's a common point, but I believe it's a flawed comparison that conflates two very different situations. There is a fundamental difference between a historical figure who is long dead and a living artist who is actively profiting from our consumption and continuing to have a direct social impact. Wagner cannot benefit from the royalties of a modern performance, nor can his presence on a playlist today further normalize anti-Semitism in a tangible, ongoing way. His harm is historical. It is contained. A living artist, however, directly benefits. The money we give them can be used to fund legal defenses against their victims. The platform we give them allows them to continue to influence culture, and in some cases, to find new victims. The question, "Where do you draw the line?" is often used as a rhetorical device to paralyze us into inaction. It suggests that because the line is blurry in some hypothetical cases, we cannot act in the obvious ones. But we can when there are credible, repeated accusations of serious harm or a clear pattern of destructive behavior. The line is not blurry at all. It is quite clear.
Leo, Chloe's argument centers on this idea of a platform, that even if the financial impact is small, a listener contributes to an artist's cultural power and relevance. How can you truly separate the art from the artist when the artist is still alive, tweeting, and benefiting from that platform?
Because we, as listeners, are not children. We are mature consumers capable of complex thought. I can listen to a song and admire its brilliant chord progression or its clever lyricism without for a moment endorsing the artist's personal life or their latest political tweet. This ability to hold two conflicting ideas in our head at once, this person is flawed, but this creation is beautiful, is a mark of intellectual maturity. Chloe's approach, while well-intentioned, risks creating a, quote, chilling effect on art itself. If artists know they will be judged and potentially cast out for any personal failing or provocative statement, they will retreat into safe, sanitized, and ultimately boring territory. Art will cease to be a space for transgression and exploration and become a space for moral conformity. That is a tremendous loss for our culture. Frankly, much of this boils down to what can be described as, quote, virtue signaling. The act of publicly boycotting an artist often does more to make the boycotter feel righteous than it does to concretely punish the artist or help their victims. It's a performance of morality, and I am more interested in the private, authentic experience of engaging with art itself.
That's a strong charge. Chloe, a quick response to the idea of virtue signaling?
Calling a principled stance virtue signaling is a way to dismiss genuine ethical concerns without engaging with them. It implies a cynical motive where there is none. My concern is not about feeling righteous. It's about the material reality of who gets to have a career and who is silenced. It's about creating a culture where harm is not rewarded.
Let's talk about responsibility at a higher level. Do streaming platforms, record labels, and radio stations have a moral obligation to deplatform controversial artists? Or should they be neutral arbiters of content?
They absolutely have a responsibility. These companies are not passive conduits. They are active curators. Their algorithms and editorial playlists are immensely powerful in shaping what the world listens to. They have a corporate social responsibility to ensure they are not actively promoting and profiting from artists who cause significant social harm.
I see that as a dangerous path toward corporate censorship. Should a handful of executives at Spotify or Apple Music become the moral arbiters for the entire world, their role should be to provide a platform for as much expression as possible within the bounds of the law. Once they start making curatorial decisions based on vague, shifting moral criteria, they put too much power in their own hands, and we lose access to a wider range of art.
But they already curate, Leo. The idea of a neutral platform is a myth. They promote certain artists over others every single day. The only question is what criteria they use for that promotion.
And I would rather they use commercial and artistic criteria, not a moral checklist.
We're nearing the end of our time. I would like to move to closing statements. Chloe, you have the floor.
Thank you. I want to be clear. This isn't about achieving moral purity or being a perfect consumer. That's an impossible standard. This is about being mindful. It's about recognizing that our choices, even small ones like what we stream, have a ripple effect. They contribute to a larger cultural conversation about who we value and what we are willing to tolerate. Supporting an artist is a choice. When presented with a choice between an artist known for their harm and one who contributes positively to the world, why would we not choose the latter? Your listening habits are a small vote you cast every day. I urge you to vote for a culture of accountability, respect, and justice.
Thank you, Chloe. Leo, your closing statement.
Art is one of the last remaining spaces in our society where we can engage with complexity, ambiguity, and even darkness without condoning it. It is a sanctuary for the difficult questions, not a temple for perfect saints. To demand that our artists be moral exemplars is to rob art of its power to explore the full, complicated, and often ugly truth of the human condition. We must protect that space fiercely. So I encourage listeners to trust themselves. Trust your own ability to think critically, to hold complexity, and to separate a beautiful song from a flawed person. Don't let a fear of moral contagion or public judgment limit your cultural and emotional world. The power of great art is that it transcends the person who made it. Let it.
Thank you, Leo Vance and Chloe Toussaint, for an incredibly challenging and necessary conversation. You have laid bare the central tension of our modern cultural lives, the conflict between our personal conscience and the freedom of art. The next time you press play, what will you be thinking? The decision ultimately rests with you. Good evening.